Steve Wilks. And I think it's important to remember the expectations that were put on Steve Wilks. This is a championship. This is supposed to be a championship team. They had the number one defense, a lot of talent, still winning culture. They've had a winning team for years. And he's supposed to just step right in and keep it going. So far, he hasn't really been able to do that. He's getting side-eyed from his players, it looks like, his coach. I just think it's important to remember that Steve Wilks has been a part of a winning culture since 2017. He's been sort of bouncing around the league. He coached the Cardinals. He was with the Browns. He coached the Panthers. You know, he's been taking on some reclamation projects, which is admirable. But he didn't build this 49ers culture.
No.
We sort of feel like Robert Saleh and DeMeco Ryans did, especially with that defense. And now Steve Wilks is coming from a culture of, you know, just hang on for dear life. We're terrible. Coming here, I mean, he has no affiliation with what the Niners built. And I think that the players look at him as an outsider, and it's easy to point the finger at Wilks when things don't go right because he's such an outsider. I think that I don't know how he gets past that one, but Steve Wilks has to sort of figure out a way to win over his players. I don't think they're bought in. Therapy is an important part of my life. Sometimes you need someone to give you a little coaching, or someone to listen to you without judgment, or someone you could be completely honest with and someone who could be completely honest with you. Is something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? Regardless if you have a clinical mental health issue like depression or anxiety, or if you're just a human who lives in this world who is going through a hard time, therapy can give you tools to approach your life in a very different way. And that's why I'm excited to tell you about today's sponsor, BetterHelp. BetterHelp's mission is to make therapy more affordable and more accessible. And this is an important mission because finding a therapist can be really hard, especially when you're limited to the options in your area. BetterHelp is a platform that makes finding a therapist easier because it's online, it's remote, and by filling out a few questions, BetterHelp can match you to a professional therapist in as little as a few days. It's easy to sign up and get matched with a therapist. There's a link in my description. It's betterhelp.com/Grant Cohn. That's GrantCohn. Clicking that link helps support this channel, but it also gets you 10% off your first month of BetterHelp so you can connect with the therapist and see if it helps you. And because finding a therapist is a little like dating, if you don't really fit with that therapist, which is a common thing with therapy, you can easily switch to a therapist for free without stressing about insurance, who's in your network, or anything like that. So if you're struggling, consider online therapy with BetterHelp. Click the link in the description or visit betterhelp.com/Grant Cohn. Thank you again, BetterHelp, for supporting this channel.
Well, yeah, I don't think they're bought in either. And then really, if you look at Coach Wilks' resume, it's very, very diverse, right? But, you know, if I'm being 100% fair, I would ask, well, why have you been to so many teams in your career, right? For such short stints, right? One of those things that you could look, one of the points that you highlighted on was him coaching on losing teams. Well, sometimes when you come in and you can be the savior of a team that's not doing well, things can look a little better, right? When you're coming in and winning 8 games on a team that seemingly lost their head coach, and you're giving the fan base something to actually cheer for. You know, everybody can talk about how much of a great cleaner of a mess you are, but what can you do when you have the full deck? What can you do when we're not looking at, oh, well, he's doing good for this? No, it's not a bad situation. You have the best environment around you. You're coming into the #1 defense overall, and you seemingly have the best player in football on the defensive side of the ball. So, Coach Wilks could be going through a little bit of, you know, the big leagues may be a little too much. It may be, right? But, you know, notwithstanding, go.
Oh, go ahead. My bad.
No. But notwithstanding, he just got some help on the defensive line. And I feel like this is what I see. When we get out of the bye, they're going to run 49ers football. They're going to rush 4. Then they're going to come straight out the wide 9. And I'm going to tell you this right now. If our defense is struggling with the wide 9, done exactly the way Kyle sees it fit, do we run what Coach Wilks runs? Do we run his defense? Or do we demote him and elevate Holland?
They're not going to vote him. I don't know. I don't know. I got one more point I want to make about Wilks. I think it's interesting. We're going to do Coach's Wisdom later. We have a new segment where Coach drops pearls of wisdom on us because whenever I talk to you on the phone, you do, and he has a lot of wisdom. So one thing, Grant's wisdom today, I feel like one of the issues with Wilks, he may not realize it, the Niners may not realize it, but he's accustomed to losing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You understand when people play for losing teams for long enough, they coach losing teams for long enough, they kind of get desensitized to it. They're just accustomed to it. They expect it. And now you're on a team where they know how to push through the season. They're signed up for the long haul. It almost like, I feel like some teams like don't want to draft players from Vanderbilt, things like that, quarterbacks, because it's like, man, it was the Jay Cutler thing. It's like, man, you're just way too accustomed to losing. I think Steve Wilks is a little accustomed to losing, and I think being in a winning culture is a shock from the expectations of his coach. The expectations, all of it, man. Like having good players is sort of a double-edged sword. Like, yeah, it's nice, but do you know what to do with them? And if you're not the number one defense in the league, do you understand what's going to happen to you? So that's a tough one.
Yeah. I mean, all of the eyes are on you. I mean, I would ask, I don't even think he's ever been in a situation where we're not talking about games. We're talking about bad decisions. Like it ain't the game. It's not the streak. It's down to the series. It's down to the play. Right. And that's a whole nother level of standard. Right. That I don't think that he's ever had. I don't think he's ever had to deal with. So, yeah, that is a very big factor on him being in a new standard, a new process of a new expectation. And I don't think he's responded because I have to say this as well. I brought up before the defense was like officially like, you know, like the issue. I brought this up when we were winning. The week one, then we talked, Iggy, and I said, dog, our defense got issues, man. For what it's worth, we dogged the Steelers, but they drove 90 yards on us in week one. They drove 90 yards on us. And right then and there, I was already skeptical. And then even with, it's not the preseason games, but it was the practices that we were hearing about with Oakland. Right now with Las Vegas, where they were having consistent days of dogging us in the run game, consistent days of doing whatever they wanted to us on offense. And it was Jimmy. And where is Jimmy now? You know what I'm saying?
I know. Yep.
So
look, what we're looking here in this episode is how the Niners can stem the tide. They've lost 3 in a row. And what we're talking about, is Brock Purdy going to be the one to stem the tide? I don't know. This is his first taste of adversity. Is Steve Wilks going to be the one to stem the tide? I don't know. He's really accustomed to losing. Has he been the guy who stemmed the tide at Arizona or Carolina?